Healing brush. It's time to learn to use the healing brush. So open up your Lightroom CC and follow along. By the time you're done with this lecture, you'll know how to use the healing and the clone features in Lightroom CC. So with this image open, and if your image looks different than this one, please review the lectures before this so you can see how we got here. Go ahead and click on the Band-Aid icon, which is for the healing brush, or click the H key. Either one will bring you to the healing brush dialog box. In mode, you have clone and heal. And let's talk about the difference and how you can use both of them briefly. First, heal matches the texture, lighting, and shading of the sampled area to the selected area. Let me demonstrate. Select heal, and I'm going to select this light bulb. I paint over that light bulb. Actually, I don't want to duplicate another light bulb. I want to say duplicate this textured area down here. Now, while it's not perfect, you can see that the lighting, texture, and shading is sort of close. Now, if I change from healing to clone, look what happens. It's now not adjusting the lighting, texture, and shading of this area to match this area anymore. So that's why the dramatic difference. You can see that heal gives you a much closer match in terms of drawing something out or healing over something so it no longer is visible. When would you want to use healing? I would say that in most cases you would want to use healing because you want to match where you're painting into. In some cases you may want to, instead of healing, you may want to use clone so that you may preserve one image and transpose it onto another. But I would guess 80% of the time you're going to be looking for healing. Now let's go ahead and delete this now that you understand what the difference between those two modes are. You can delete by selecting on the area you've painted into and clicking the backspace button, which will then delete it and bring you back to the original version of the image. You could have, of course, also click Control-Z on the PC to undo it as well. So now that we know that we're going to heal so that we can match texture, lighting, and shading, let's talk about the other sliders here in the dialog box. Size, you can see that as we slide to the right for size, the number increases all the way up to 100, all the way down to 0, and those give you bigger areas to both select from and to match into. Feather, you can see, is also adjustable from 100 to 0. 0 means you will have a hard edge at the edge of your selected or your matched area. 100 means you will have a very gradual and not very noticeable transition into the area you're healing or cloning into. I think most of the time, somewhere around 65 to 75 is a good place to start. Opacity, we'll talk about how opaque it is. 100% means it's completely visible. 0 means that it would be invisible. My recommendation is start with 100. Now that we have our healing brush selected and sized, we can go into our image. And here's where I would like you to follow along so that we can try something together. What I'd like to do is I would actually like to make this light disappear. How can we do that? Well, we can do that by healing over it. Now, I want to note also that you can adjust the size of your brush with the keystrokes of left bracket and right bracket, which should just be below your backspace key and to the left 1 or 2 keys. So first, let's go ahead and select the right size brush. To me, 79 looks like a reasonable place to start here. Feather is at 67, opacity is at 100. I'm going to pick this light to heal away, and I'm going to start my selection just below, with the crosshairs just below the light, and then I'm going to paint up until above the light and release. Now you can see that I've confused Lightroom. I've confused it because it thinks I want to put another light bulb in the place of the light bulb that I just painted over, but I don't. What I want to do is I want to put that textured background there. So how do you think I can do this? Well, if you guessed that I could do this by adjusting the area that's being sampled, which is this area, so this is being sampled and this is being matched or healed into, you were right. I can click on this blue box and drag it around until I get something that looks correct. Now you can see that I want to match the texture behind the light, and I can adjust up and down, left and right until things look proper. And to me, right about there looks good. It looks like the pattern is uninterrupted, so I can let go. And what you can see now is that the light bulb is no longer visible, and that the pattern behind the wall, generally speaking, looks consistent and pretty good. Now, if you really wanted to be particular, this area right here where it's feathered looks a little off, but the rest of it looks very close. Of course, we are still left with this wire hanging down, but we'll say that's okay for the moment. This is how you can use healing to do something very complicated, which is to remove a light bulb with a textured background that is shaded, something that if you try to do manually would be very hard. And you saw that we could do it with a few simple keystrokes, and that's why healing is so very powerful. What I want you to do now is I'll give you 5 seconds of silence in this video for you to pause it and do that yourself. Now's your time. Well, congratulations. You should have by now made that light bulb disappear just like I did, so way to go. And I want to teach you one more thing and talk about one more thing before we go, and it's this Visualize Spots tool. This is intended for cameras that have dirty sensors, which is very common in DSLRs, and it produces these abnormal blobs, usually seen in the sky. If you click on Visualize Spots, you can see here that it's clearly not showing us these spots. You could try to dial down the threshold and look for spots, but that still isn't showing us much. I'll go ahead and unselect this. You see, what it's actually showing us is areas of high contrast within the image. So click it again, and you'll note it's showing us these edges. And if you can find these edges and see regular patterns, well, it's obviously not dust spots, but if you have a sky where there should be no hard edges like this, and they're appearing some blobs, you know you have dust spots, and you can go in and then heal those spots right here. So that's why Visualize Spots. And then of course the threshold here will allow you to adjust the sensitivity. Slide it to the right, it'll show you more spots. Slide it to the left, it will show you fewer of them. It's just the sensitivity of the contrast threshold. Select it again, our regular image is back. Now you have made your first light bulb disappear using the Heal tool. You understand the difference between Heal and Clone, which is that Heal matches texture, lighting, and shading, Clone doesn't. You know how to use the size, feather, and opacity features within Lightroom CC, and you understand what Visualize Spots is and how to use it effectively for your camera. I hope that's been helpful. What we're going to do next is we're going to learn more about the brush tool, and you can get there now by selecting B, and I'll meet you there in the next lecture.